It was not exactly breaking news that President Trump beat up on the press yesterday. What was strange and really a little startling was the venue. He did it in Poland, standing next to the Polish leader. So that created a lot of headlines and coverage and commentary and some rather caustic remarks from journalists and anchors and commentators about the president criticizing the American press while on foreign soil. What's more, standing next to a Polish leader who has attempted his own crackdown on the press. So what happened was the president at a news conference got a question about CNN and the wrestling video, and CNN threatening to expose the identity of the Reddit user, the online message board Reddit, who had originally posted a version of this thing. And the president hit back hard. He said CNN's got some pretty serious problems. They've been fake news for a long time. They've been covering me in a very, very dishonest way, says President Trump, and goes on to say that CNN, in his view, took the wrestling video too seriously. And then he threw in NBC just because, right? Saying that NBC is equally as bad, despite the fact that I made them a fortune with The Apprentice. So it's always very personal with Donald Trump. He worked for NBC or at NBC, created a hit show, made NBC a lot of money. Jeff Zucker was running the network then. Insinuation, well, NBC's being ungrateful now in the way it covers me. Of course, that was an entertainment show, and we're talking now years later about the NBC News Division. But here is the thing. The president has every right to beat up on the press, but he could have deflected the question. He could have decided that he wasn't going to deflect attention from his own trip, because that same morning he gave a lengthy, serious, substantive, and in some ways very well crafted and well delivered speech about the history of the Polish people, standing up to the Nazis, defending NATO and its right to defend the Western world, and calling for civilized nations to unite against the scourge of Islamic radical terrorism. And by throwing out the, we'd call it clickbait if it was online, the attacks on CNN and NBC, the president certainly diverted some media attention from the substantive speech to the subject the media love most of all, which is themselves. We can be a little self-absorbed in this business, and he's done this on Twitter as well. The Mika Brzezinski attacks, the CNN wrestling video itself. Here's an interesting backstory, though. CNN White House correspondent Jim Acosta, who has been constantly criticizing Sean Spicer and has mixed it up with the president in the past, labeling this a fake news conference after the president had called CNN fake news. Why fake? Because the question about CNN that led to the criticism came from David Martosco. He's the U.S. political editor of the Daily Mail, clearly friendly to the White House, to the point that he says he was in talks with the administration until a couple of weeks ago about possibly being considered for White House press secretary. So, do you think this is the first president in history who has taken a question from a friendly journalist? First of all, so what? Second of all, he didn't have to answer the question the way he did. And also, the president also took a question which had to do with Russia and the hacking and whether he holds Russia responsible, from NBC's Hallie Jackson, who nobody thinks is soft on the White House, and even though he also criticized her network, NBC. So, does Jim Acosta think that only if there's an approved list of questioners that he approves of, that is, that then it's a real news conference, otherwise it's a fake news conference? I mean, this is the sort of thing where people feel like the president can't get a break from the press, or that the press has a very sort of encrusted idea of how to do things. And Acosta even said, well, a conservative journalist asking questions, well, that's kind of different. You think Barack Obama never took questions from liberal journalists? Come on. So I do think the president bears some responsibility for distracting from the substantive mission of his trip by indulging himself with the media criticism. Not that he hasn't made some of this before, but I also think it's kind of audacious for the press to attack the news conference itself just because the way in which it unfolded is not the way the establishment media would have preferred.